The job offer. Jake Miller was not having a good night. His small cleaning ship floated in the quiet space dock, and he was about to head home after a long day of scrubbing rich people's spaceships. That's when his communication screen lit up with an incoming call. "Who needs cleaning at midnight?" he muttered, running his fingers through his messy brown hair. The screen showed an unknown number, which was strange these days. Most people had registered IDs. When he answered, his tired eyes went wide. On the screen was the most beautiful alien girl he had ever seen. Her skin was a soft violet color that seemed to glow in the dim light of her ship. Her silver hair floated around her face like she was underwater. "Are you Jake Miller, the ship cleaner?" Her voice was musical, but worried. She spoke perfect English, just with a slight echo that most aliens had. "Yeah, that's me. But we're closed for the night," Jake said, trying to sound professional. Even if she was pretty, midnight calls were never good news. The alien girl bit her lip, showing small pearly fangs. "I'll pay triple your usual rate. I need my ship cleaned right now. It's urgent." Jake sat up straighter. Triple rate. That would cover his rent for 3 months. "What kind of cleaning are we talking about?" he asked, suddenly very interested. "Just a standard clean," she said quickly. "Maybe too quickly. But it must be done tonight. I'm docked in Bay 47. Jake checked his tablet. Bay 47 was in the expensive part of the space dock. Very expensive. "I'll be there in 10 minutes, he said, already starting his engine. When he arrived at Bay 47, his jaw dropped. The ship was beautiful. A stellar-class luxury cruiser, all sleek silver curves and soft blue lights. But something was off. These ships usually had a crew of at least 10, but he could only see one life sign on his scanner. The alien girl. She met him at the airlock. She was even more striking in person, almost Jake's height, wearing a simple black flight suit that seemed too plain for such an expensive ship. "I'm Zorad," she said, extending a delicate hand. When Jake shook it, her grip was surprisingly strong. "Please follow me." Inside, the ship was strange. It was huge and luxurious, but almost empty. No personal items, no decorations, and there were marks on the walls, long scratches that someone had tried to polish out. "Just clean everything," Zura said, waving her hand around. "Especially the cargo hold." Her eyes darted to the back of the ship and then quickly away. Jake nodded, pulling his cleaning cart behind him. As he worked, he noticed more odd things. Scorch marks hidden under rugs, a broken panel hastily repaired, and was that a bullet hole covered by a painting. In the cargo hold, things got weirder. The space was massive but completely empty except for some strange crystal-like stains on the floor that his best cleaners wouldn't remove. These stains, he called out to Zara, who had been following him at a distance. "They won't come off. Just clean around them," she said sharply. Then, softer, "Please." Jake shrugged and moved on. It wasn't his job to ask questions, but when he was cleaning near the back wall, his brush hit something that made a hollow sound. The wall panel was loose. Looking over his shoulder to make sure Zora wasn't watching, Jake pressed gently on the panel. It slid aside silently, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside, strange symbols glowed with a soft blue light, pulsing like a heartbeat. "Find anything interesting?" Zara's voice came from right behind him, making him jump and spin around. She stood there, her violet skin now seeming less beautiful and more dangerous. In her hand was something that definitely wasn't a cleaning tool. Jake raised his hand slowly, his heart pounding. "I'm just the cleaner," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Whatever's going on here, I don't want any part of it." Zara's lips curved into a small smile. "I'm afraid," she said softly, "it's too late for that." Behind them, the ship's computer suddenly announced, "Warning, multiple ships approaching. Weapons detected, not just any cleanup." The warning lights flashed red across the ship's corridors. Jake's cleaning cart rolled away as Zara grabbed his arm and pulled him behind a storage unit. "Those aren't regular ships," she whispered, her violet skin now glowing with tiny dots of light. Something Jake had never seen any alien do before. "They're hunting me." Before Jake could respond, Zara pressed her hand against the wall. Her skin's glowing dots connected like a constellation, and suddenly a hidden door appeared. "Get in," she ordered. The secret room was filled with screens showing every part of the ship. But what caught Jake's eye was the wall of weapons. Not regular guns, but things that looked like they were made from the same crystal as the stains in the cargo hold. "What are you?" Jake asked, watching as Zora's skin continued to create patterns of light. "And please don't say just a rich girl who needs cleaning." Zora smiled, but this time her entire mouth glowed blue. "I'm a quantum keeper. We're rare. The crystals you saw. They're pieces of broken time. Very valuable, very dangerous, and very illegal in the wrong hands." On the screens, 3 ships surrounded them. They were ugly things, covered in spikes and warning symbols. A voice crackled through the ship's communications. "Keeper Zora, you took something that belongs to us. Give us the time shards, and maybe we'll let your little cleaner live." Jake looked at his cleaning supplies, then at the crystal weapons. "I'm guessing you don't want to give them anything." "Those pirates use time shards to rob ships," Zara said, checking her weapons. "They freeze time, steal everything, and leave entire crews trapped in moments they can never escape from. I was sent to stop them, but—" She touched a wound on her arm Jake hadn't noticed before. It didn't go as planned. Suddenly, Jake remembered something. "Wait. The crystal stains in the cargo hold. They're moving." Zara's eyes widened. "What?" "When I was cleaning, I noticed they were spreading, like time was leaking." Zara grabbed his shoulders, her face inches from his. "You can see time leaks. That's impossible. Unless—" She stepped back, looking at him with new interest. "What kind of cleaner are you?" Before Jake could answer, the ship shuddered. The pirates were trying to cut their way in. "Look," Jake said, pointing at his tablet. He'd been scanning the ship while cleaning. It was standard procedure. "These readings show the crystal energy is strongest in the engine room, but when I cleaned there earlier, it was empty." Zara's face lit up. Literally, her skin creating a pattern Jake now recognized as excitement. "Of course, they're not just after the time shards. They want what I hid in the time stream itself." A loud explosion rocked the ship. On the screens, they watched as the pirates' cutting beams sliced through the outer airlock. "Jake Miller," Zora said, tossing him one of the crystal weapons. "How do you feel about a promotion? From spaceship cleaner to time guardian." The weapon hummed in his hands, feeling strangely familiar, like his cleaning tools, but 1,000,000 times more powerful. "Will it involve more midnight calls?" he asked, trying to sound brave. Zora laughed, the sound making the crystals in the room pulse with light. "Oh, trust me, time doesn't care what hour it is." As the pirates breached the outer hull, Jake and Zara watched through the screens as something else emerged from the engine room, something that had been hiding in a pocket of frozen time. Something big. "That," Zara said with a grin that lit up the entire room, "is what they're really after. And thanks to your cleaning scan, we now have the advantage." The thing from the engine room roared, and this time, even the pirate ships backed away. Jake gripped his crystal weapon tighter. "I don't suppose this is covered in my cleaning contract." "Consider this a very special bonus package," Zara said, her skin now pulsing with battle patterns. "Ready to help me clean up some time, pirates." The truth unravels. The creature from the engine room moved like liquid shadow, its form shifting between past and future versions of itself. Jake had never seen anything like it. It looked like a cross between a space whale and a living constellation. "Meet Echo," Zara said proudly. "She's a time leviathan, the last of her kind." The massive creature floated in space between them and the pirate ships, its body rippling with the same crystal energy as the time shards. Every few seconds, it would split into 3 versions of itself, past, present, and future, before merging back together. "You hid an entire time Leviathan in the engine room?" Jake asked, still gripping his crystal weapon. "How did I not see it while cleaning?" Zara's skin patterns formed what Jake was learning to recognize as a smirk. "Because every time you walked in, Echo shifted herself 5 minutes into the future. But somehow, your cleaning scans could detect her temporal signature. No normal human technology should be able to do that." The pirate ships started backing away, but their leader's voice boomed through the comm system again. "A time Leviathan. You've been holding out on us, Keeper. That's worth more than all the time shards in the galaxy." Jake looked at his cleaning tablet again. Something wasn't right. "Zara, these energy readings, they're not just coming from Echo. They're coming from you too." Before Zara could respond, one of the pirate ships fired a strange beam. It hit Echo, and suddenly the time Leviathan froze, split between all its time states at once. "No!" Zara screamed. Her skin's glow went from blue to red, and the patterns became sharp, angry shapes. She raised her hands, and to Jake's shock, crystal energy poured from her fingertips. "You're not just a keeper," Jake realized. "You're part-time Leviathan too." "Quarter, actually," Zara said through gritted teeth as she tried to free Echo. "My grandmother fell in love with a time Leviathan who could take human form. The pirates didn't just hunt Echo's kind for power, they hunted us for our abilities." Jake looked at his cleaning supplies, then at the crystal weapon, then back at his tablet. An idea started forming. "Your time energy and Echo's, they're the same frequency. That's why my cleaning scans could detect her. I've been calibrating my equipment to your energy signature all night." The pirate started cutting through the hull again. Echo was still frozen, trapped between moments. Zara's power wasn't enough to free her alone. "Your cleaning tech," Zara said suddenly. "It's not normal tech, is it? Where did you get it?" Jake stared at his cleaning cart. He'd always wondered why his grandmother's old cleaning equipment worked better than anything modern. The way it could remove stains that seemed impossible to clean, how it sometimes made time feel slower when he had a rush job. "It was my grandmother's," he said slowly. "She used to tell stories about cleaning ships that could travel through time, but I thought she was just making things up." Zara's eyes widened. "What was your grandmother's name?" "Sarah Miller, but the alien she worked for called her something else. Something like the temporal sanitizer," Zara whispered. "She was legendary. She didn't just clean ships. She cleaned up temporal messes all across the galaxy. The time Leviathans trusted her with their technology because she could see time like they could." The ship shuddered as the pirates breached another hull section. Echo's frozen form flickered dangerously. Jake looked at his grandmother's cleaning equipment with new eyes. The weird symbols he'd never understood, the strange hum it made when activated, the way stains sometimes disappeared before he even touched them. "So," he said, picking up his sonic mop, which now looked suspiciously like a time manipulation device, "you're saying cleaning runs in my family?" Zara laughed, the sound making the time shards pulse. "Your grandmother didn't just clean time, Jake. She protected it. And now the pirates aren't just facing a quantum keeper and a time Leviathan. They're facing a temporal sanitizer." Jake finished, his cleaning equipment beginning to glow with the same crystal energy as Zora's weapons. And this ship could really use a deep clean. But before they could act, a new voice came over the comm system, one that made Zora's skin patterns turn pure white with shock. "Hello, little sister," the voice said. "Did you really think you could hide our family's legacy forever?" On the screens, a new ship appeared. It was made entirely of time shards, piloted by someone who looked just like Zora, except their skin patterns moved backward in time. "No escape." "Nova," Zora whispered, her skin patterns shifting to show ripples of both fear and anger. I thought you were lost in the time storm 5 years ago." The image of Zora's sister on the screen smiled, but her skin patterns moved like a broken clock. "Lost? No, dear sister. I learned. Do you know what happens when a time Leviathan hybrid gets caught in a time storm? You become the storm." Jake's cleaning tablet started beeping wildly. The readings were off the charts, showing temporal energy building up around Nova's ship. "She's not just bending time," Jake said, checking his grandmother's equipment. "She's breaking it. These readings, they're similar to the stains in the cargo hold." Nova laughed, the sound making the time shards in the walls crack. "The cleaner boy is smarter than he looks. Those stains are time bleeds, moments that won't stop repeating because I've worn them too thin." The pirate ships suddenly moved away as Nova's crystal ship grew larger, absorbing the time shards scattered through space. "You always were dramatic, Nova," Zora said, her hands glowing with defensive energy. "What do you really want?" "What every time Leviathan wants. To exist in all moments at once. But our grandmother's human blood makes us too weak." "Echo, though." Nova's eyes gleamed. "A pure time Leviathan's power could let me break free from linear time completely." Jake looked at his cleaning supplies, then at Echo's frozen form. The time Leviathan was still split between moments, but something about the way the light bent around her gave him an idea. "Zara," he whispered, "my grandmother's sonic mop. It doesn't just clean stains. Look at the settings." On the handle of the mop, beneath years of wear, symbols matched the ones in Echo's crystalline body. But they weren't just random patterns, they were time coordinates. "Your grandmother," Zora said, realization dawning in her glowing patterns. "She didn't just clean time paradoxes, she helped time Leviathans navigate the time streams. That's how they could travel without getting lost." Nova's ship fired a beam of pure temporal energy, starting to pull Echo's frozen form toward her. The massive time Leviathan's 3-time states began to separate further. Jake grabbed his sonic mop and turned it to a setting he'd never used before. The symbol looked like a time loop being smoothed out. "If Nova can wear time thin enough to make stains, then maybe we can polish those moments back into place." Zora finished, her patterns brightening with hope. But as they prepared to act, Nova revealed her final trick. Her ship released hundreds of time fragments, broken moments that formed into twisted versions of herself from different timelines. "Meet my temporal echoes." Nova's voice came from everywhere at once. "Turns out when you break time enough, you can keep all your best versions." The temporal echoes began phasing through the ship's walls, each one moving through a different moment in time. Some were younger versions of Nova, others older, all with the same broken clock patterns on their skin. Jake raised his grandmother's mop like a weapon, watching as it hummed in harmony with Zora's crystal energy. "I don't suppose your grandmother ever mentioned how to clean up evil time clones." Zora's patterns formed a battle configuration Jake hadn't seen before. "No, but my grandfather used to say time is like a dirty window. Sometimes you have to break it completely before you can make it truly clean." Nova's temporal echoes surrounded them, each one existing half a second apart from the others. Behind them, Echo's 3-time states were being pulled further apart, threatening to shatter the time Leviathan across all of history. "Ready to make cleaning history?" Jake asked, activating all his grandmother's equipment at once. Zora's skin blazed like a supernova. "Time to show my sister why you never mess with the galaxy's best cleaning crew." The temporal echoes attacked from all moments at once, as Nova's laughter echoed through past, present, and future. But they had forgotten one crucial detail. In a ship this size, a good cleaning crew always works in pairs, fighting back. Jake had cleaned a lot of strange things in his career, but temporal echoes were definitely not in his usual service package. As Nova's time clones attacked from different moments, he discovered something incredible. His grandmother's cleaning supplies each worked on different parts of time itself. The sonic mop could wipe away moments, causing temporal echoes to fade back into their own timelines. The quantum duster absorbed temporal energy like static, and the chronovacuum, which he'd always thought was just really good at picking up pet hair, actually sucked up loose time fragments. "Your cleaning style is unusual," Zara said, while blasting 3 temporal echoes with crystal energy. Her skin patterns now moved in sync with Jake's cleaning equipment, creating a harmonious light show. "Thanks," Jake replied, using his sonic mop to erase a young version of Nova who was trying to attack from last Tuesday. "I always got 5 stars on my reviews." But Nova's main form watched from her crystal ship, her broken clock patterns spinning wildly. "Cute tricks. But can your cleaning supplies handle this?" She raised her hands, and suddenly the time bleeds from the cargo hold began to move. The crystallized moments cracked open, and out stepped the frozen crew members from all the ships Nova had attacked over the years. "Time-locked victims," Zara gasped. "She's using them as puppets." The frozen crew members moved like robots, their forms flickering between moments of their lives. A captain forever giving orders that would never be completed. An engineer eternally fixing a problem that would never be solved. Jake's tablet beeped with a new reading. These people, they're not just frozen in time. They're stuck in their worst moments, repeating them over and over. Nova's laughter echoed across all timelines. "The moment you realize you're about to lose everything. It's such a powerful temporal node. Perfect for harvesting." But as Jake watched the time-locked crew members approach, he noticed something. His grandmother's old cleaning supplies had stickers on them. What he'd thought were just decorative patterns were actually ancient time Leviathan script. "Zara," he called out, "what does this symbol mean?" He pointed to a sticker on the chronovacuum that looked like a spiral being unwound. Zara's eyes widened. "That's the symbol for temporal release. It's how time Leviathans free themselves from time knots." Jake looked at the frozen crew members, then at Echo still split between 3 states, and finally at his cleaning cart. "Time isn't meant to be perfectly clean," he said slowly. "It's meant to flow." He adjusted his equipment settings, and instead of trying to erase the temporal stains, he began to polish them in circles. The crystallized time started to soften, becoming fluid again. "No," Nova screamed as the time-locked crew members began to wake up. "Do you know how long it took me to harvest those moments?" But something else was happening too. As the frozen moments melted, Echo's 3 states began to pull back together. The time Leviathan's eyes, all sets of them, focused on Nova's ship. "Temporal harmonics reestablishing," Zara said, her skin patterns matching the flow of restored time. "Jake, you're not cleaning time. You're restarting it." Nova's temporal echoes began to flicker as their stolen moments returned to the timeline. But Nova herself just smiled wider, her broken patterns spinning faster. "You think freeing a few frozen people changes anything?" she snarled. "I am the time storm now, and if I can't have Echo's power..." She raised her hands, and her crystal ship began to crack apart. Time itself seemed to scream as Nova pulled at reality's seams. "She's creating a temporal black hole," Zara shouted. "If it opens fully, it'll erase everything. Past, present, and future." Jake looked at his cleaning cart, then at the swirling vortex of broken time forming around Nova's ship. He remembered something his grandmother used to say. Sometimes the biggest messes require the smallest solutions. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something he'd found earlier. A single time shard no bigger than his thumb. But this one was different. Unlike the others, it was perfectly clean. "Zara," he said, holding up the shard, "I think I know why your sister really came here. This isn't just any time shard, is it?" Zara's patterns froze in recognition. "That's a moment zero crystal. The first moment of time itself." "Where did you?" "Found it stuck in the bathroom drain," Jake said with a shrug. "Figured it was important, so I cleaned it up." Above them, Nova's temporal black hole grew larger, but her eyes were fixed on the tiny crystal in Jake's hand. For the first time, her broken clock patterns showed fear. "Ready to show your sister what happens when a temporal sanitizer and a quantum keeper work together?" Jake asked. Zara's patterns burst into brilliant light. Time to take out the trash. The real mission. The moment zero crystal pulsed in Jake's hand, its light perfectly steady, unlike the chaotic temporal energies swirling around them. Nova's temporal black hole had grown large enough to show glimpses of other timelines, worlds where things had gone very differently. "That crystal," Nova said, her voice echoing from all possible futures at once. "I've spent lifetimes looking for it. And you found it in a drain." Her broken clock patterns spun with rage. Jake shrugged, holding his sonic mop like a staff. "Maybe you should have hired a better cleaning service." But as he and Zara prepared to use the crystal, something unexpected happened. The moment zero crystal started to resonate with Jake's grandmother's cleaning equipment, and suddenly new symbols lit up on all his tools, hidden messages written in ancient time Leviathan script. "These aren't just cleaning instructions," Zara gasped, her skin patterns matching the glowing symbols. "They're a message. From your grandmother. To you." The symbols projected into the air, forming a hologram of an elderly woman in a cleaner's uniform. Jake's heart skipped. It was his grandmother, Sarah Miller, but not as he remembered her. Her uniform bore the same symbols as Echo's crystalline body. "Jake," the hologram said warmly, "if you're seeing this, you've discovered your true inheritance. I wasn't just cleaning ships. I was part of the Time Leviathan Conservation Corps. We protected the natural flow of time itself." Nova's temporal black hole pulsed angrily, but even she seemed transfixed by the message. "The moment zero crystal you found," Sarah's hologram continued, "isn't just the first moment of time. It's a key to the temporal sanctuary, a place we built to protect time leviathans from those who would abuse their power." Zara's patterns shifted to show shock. The sanctuary isn't a myth, but every quantum keeper has searched for it. Because they were looking in the wrong time, Jake realized, studying his grandmother's tools with new understanding. These aren't just cleaning supplies, they're pieces of a temporal map. The hologram nodded. "The vacuum's handle shows the coordinates. The mop contains the temporal frequency. And the duster, well, that actually just dusts. But it does it in 5 dimensions." Nova's laugh cut through the message. "How perfect. Not only do I get the moment zero crystal, but now I'll find the sanctuary too. All those time leviathans, just waiting to have their power harvested." She directed her temporal black hole to pull at the crystal in Jake's hand. But something strange happened instead. The crystal's light linked with Echo's 3 time states, then connected to Zara's skin patterns, and finally resonated with Jake's cleaning tools. "No," Jake said, understanding flooding him as the equipment's symbols aligned. "My grandmother didn't hide the sanctuary in a place. She hid it in a job." Zara's patterns burst with revelation. The cleaning company, Time Leviathans, wouldn't hide in some secret location. They'd hide in plain sight, disguised as cleaning equipment. Every time you cleaned a ship, I was actually maintaining the temporal barriers protecting them. Jake finished. The perfect cover story. Who questions the cleaning crew? Nova screamed in frustration, her temporal echoes all speaking at once. "You mean I've wasted lifetimes searching through time and space, when you should have just checked the classified ads?" Jake grinned. "Best cleaning service in the galaxy. Now with temporal protection included." But Nova wasn't finished. Her temporal black hole began pulling in her own temporal echoes, each version of herself combining into something new. Her broken clock patterns merged and mutated, turning her into a creature that existed in all timelines simultaneously. "If I can't have the sanctuary," Nova's 1,000 voices echoed, "I'll become one myself." The ship's structure began to tear apart as Nova's new form grew, reality bending around her. Jake looked at his cleaning tools, then at Zara, then at Echo still hovering nearby. "My grandmother left one more message," he said, pointing to a final symbol that had appeared on his name badge. "Time doesn't need to be perfect." Zara's patterns completed the phrase. "It just needs to be balanced." As Nova's form reached through multiple timelines to grab them, Jake raised the moment zero crystal and spoke the words his grandmother had always said before a big job. Time for a deep clean. Final showdown. The moment zero crystal blazed in Jake's hand as Nova's transformed body stretched across multiple timelines, her 1,000 voices echoing through every possible moment. She wasn't just a time Leviathan hybrid anymore. She had become a living temporal catastrophe. You can't clean up what exists in every timeline. Nova's voices thundered. Her new form looked like a constellation of broken clocks, each piece showing a different moment in history. "Watch me," Jake said, attaching the moment zero crystal to his sonic mop. "I've got a 5-star cleaning rating to maintain." As the crystal connected with his grandmother's equipment, something incredible happened. All of Jake's cleaning supplies began to float, arranging themselves in a circle. The symbols on each tool lit up, forming a temporal cleaning array. "Jake," Zora gasped, her skin patterns rippling with recognition. "That's the legendary temporal janitor's crown. Your grandmother wasn't just part of the conservation corps. She was their leader." The cleaning array spun faster, and suddenly Jake could see what his grandmother had seen. Time wasn't a straight line or even a web. It was more like a giant house, with different rooms representing different timelines. And right now, Nova was tracking temporal mud through all of them. "Zara," Jake called out, "remember what you said about time being like a dirty window. What if we don't just clean it? What if we renovate?" Understanding flashed across Zora's patterns. She placed her hands on the cleaning array, adding her quantum keeper energy to the mix. Echo, still split in 3, moved her time states to form a triangle around them. "You can't seriously think a cleaning formation can stop me." Nova laughed, but there was a hint of worry in her 1,000 voices. "Not just any cleaning formation," Jake said, his grandmother's tools humming with power. The Time Leviathan Conservation Corps had a special name for this technique. They called it the Universal Deep Clean Protocol. Zora finished, her patterns synchronizing with the array. Jake raised his crystal-powered mop like a conductor's baton. Each cleaning tool began to glow with a different temporal frequency. The vacuum tuned to the past, sucking up loose timeline fragments. The duster harmonized with the present, polishing each moment to its proper shine. The scrubber brushes resonated with the future, clearing away temporal paradoxes. And the mop, powered by the moment zero crystal, tied it all together. "Time to show you how we deal with multi-dimensional mess," Jake announced, and began to clean time itself. The array spun faster, creating a temporal whirlpool that began to counter Nova's chaos. But she fought back, trying to splinter reality further. That's when Jake remembered his grandmother's most important cleaning rule. Sometimes you need to make a bigger mess to achieve a perfect clean. "Zara," he shouted. "Echo, help me reverse the flow." As Zara and Echo added their power, the cleaning array flipped its rotation. Instead of fighting Nova's temporal chaos, they amplified it, but with one crucial difference: they were controlling its flow. "What are you doing?" Nova's voices screamed as her timeline splinters began to spiral inward. "Basic cleaning principle," Jake explained, wielding his mop like a master. "When you can't scrub out a stain, you fold it in on itself." The temporal energies collapsed inward, pulling Nova's fragmented form with them. But instead of creating destruction, the implosion was carefully controlled, like folding a fitted sheet, if the sheet was made of time itself. "No," Nova cried. "I won't go back to being trapped in one timeline." "Who said anything about one timeline?" Jake smiled. As the energy compressed further, he nodded to Echo. The Time Leviathan's 3 states synchronized perfectly, creating a temporal lens. Through it, they could all see it, the temporal sanctuary. But it wasn't a hidden location. It was a perfect moment, endlessly repeating, where time flowed like crystal-clear water. "Sister," Zara called to Nova, her patterns showing compassion. "You spent so long looking for a way to exist in all timelines that you forgot how to exist beautifully in any of them." The moment zero crystal pulsed one final time, and reality reshuffled itself like a well-organized closet. Nova's fractured form collapsed into the sanctuary's perfect moment, her broken patterns finally finding peace in the endless flow. As the temporal energies settled, Jake looked at his cleaning cart, now revealed as the ancient artifacts they truly were. "So," he said to Zara, "does this mean I have to raise my hourly rate?" Zara laughed, her patterns dancing with joy. "Jake Miller, I think you've just become the youngest ever Time Leviathan Conservation Corps director." Although her patterns formed a teasing smile. "We might need to update the uniform." Echo's 3 states merged back into one, her crystalline form humming with renewed strength. The Time Leviathan gently nuzzled Jake's cleaning cart, acknowledging another of her kind's guardians. "You know what this means," Jake said, looking at his cleaning supplies with new respect. "Someone's going to have to clean up all these temporal agencies, keep the timelines tidy, maintain the sanctuary." "Sounds like a big job," Zara said, her patterns brightening. "Need a partner?" Jake grinned, pulling out his grandfather's old business cards from his pocket. The holographic text shifted to reveal new words. "Miller and Associates. Temporal Sanitation Services. No mess too big, no timeline too tangled. Now offering multi-dimensional cleaning packages. Quantum satisfaction guaranteed." Above them, the stars twinkled like freshly polished time crystals, and somewhere, Jake was sure his grandmother was smiling. After all, a clean timeline is a happy timeline.